turning the demilitarized zone between the two Koreas, one of the most heavily armed and tension-filled areas in the world, into a landmark of peace. That's what the South Korean president has said he aims to do in recent weeks. But just how feasible is this goal and how do we get there? Today, we take an in-depth look into the issue with Lieutenant General CHUN In-bum, a highly decorated veteran of the Republic of Korea Army and commander of the ROK Special Warfare Command, who was also involved firsthand in negotiations and cooperation with the US on military relations, as well as the most sensitive security issues on the peninsula. Lieutenant General, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, over the past year, we saw a flurry of talks and negotiations between the two Koreas, which gave rise to hope that there'll be progress in building peace on the peninsula. From a military perspective, though, just how feasible is this? And have we actually seen progress in this regard?
Yes, the tensions on the Korean peninsula have declined, but I think what we see now is misleading because tensions can always go back to the situation we had a couple of years back. And so I feel that as a former military person, that we need to be always ready for a situation where it might not be very inviting.
I see. Well, the North has actually conducted multiple missile tests since the Hanoi summit earlier this year. And of course, the recent test that it conducted, it says it was an SLBM test. What do you make of these developments? Have we actually seen a backward step in progress?
The most recent test, which was on 2 October, is most unfortunate. It is different from the previous 10 tests that the North Koreans have conducted since May. The previous tests were mostly tactical in nature. They were, by definition, ballistic missiles, but they had a tactical orientation to it, and meaning it was in shorter range, mostly in theater. They had increased its accuracy and range and evasive capability. But the one that they shot off just recently is a submarine-launched ballistic missile. This is a first strike capability, and it is a clear violation of the UN Security Council resolutions. So, and it came just a few days before the talks between the United States and North Korea in Sweden. So all of this was just bad timing, and it was very unfortunate, and it was very disappointing from a Korean view.
I see. And how would you rate North Korea's level of threat or capabilities at this point?
So the North Koreans have a very large conventional force. Much of it is obsolete, but the North Koreans have been steadily developing a niche capability. Namely, we know that they have a nuclear capability. They can make nuclear weapons. They have considerable intermediate range capability and now seeking intercontinental capability. They have a very sophisticated and up-to-date cyber capability. Not a day goes by that the world is threatened by this capability. They also have chemical and biological weapons, and they have about 200,000 plus special forces or light infantry, which is above the quality of your average North Korean. So if you think of all of these put together and other aspects of North Korean military, there's no doubt that they pose a significant threat to the security of the Republic of Korea as well as the entire region.
Right, but on the other hand, North Korea has condemned the continuation of joint military drills between South Korea and the US. What is your view on this?
Yes, it's unfortunate that North Korea has not accepted the numerous invitations by the Republic of Korea and the United States to come and observe these exercises. These exercises have been tailored since the recent peace process on the Korean Peninsula to make sure that it is more defensive in nature than before. So right now, these exercises are not the military deployments that we used to see. These are staff command exercises just to maintain the quality of the staff training. So if the North Koreans were to come and see, they would understand this. Also on the Korean Peninsula, there is a very important organization called the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission. The NNSC observes these exercises and ensures that these exercises are defensive in nature. So we have a third party who guarantees that these exercises are defensive and are not offensive at all to any other neighbor. So North Korea need not be threatened by it. If they feel uncomfortable, we always welcome them to come and see, and I hope that one day they will accept our invitation.
Right, and what are some next steps that we should take to further ease military tensions and also build trust across the border?
Yes, so we, as in all negotiations and all peace processes, confidence building measures are the key. Right now, along the Demilitarized Zone, 155 miles, both North and South Korea face each other with considerable military forces. The comprehensive military agreement between North and South Korea last year has, to a degree, eased some of these tensions. We need to build upon this, but unfortunately, the North Koreans have not accepted further steps. For me, as a military person, what I would like to see is a inspection of the North Korean guard posts, because those are the areas that we believe are the entrances to the numerous tunnels that can be used to offensively infiltrate those 200,000 special forces that I mentioned into South Korea. So that would be a really great confidence building measure. Also, the North Koreans have close to 1,000 artillery pieces aimed at Seoul right now. We need to somehow negotiate a withdrawal of these tactical artillery pieces up to the northern area so that they do not directly threaten South Korea. These would be two measures that the North Koreans could take that would really build trust between our two countries. It's unfortunate that North Korea is unwilling so far to talk about these things, and it's only making the situation harder for them and for everybody else who lives on the Korean Peninsula, because they're not doing this.
I see, and some have actually argued that signing a peace treaty between the South and the North would actually help ease military tensions and, of course, also see progress in terms of the denuclearization talks. How feasible is this, though?
I think a peace treaty is very feasible, and it is should be welcomed. But I also think that we should not think that a peace treaty, a piece of paper, is going to protect us. There are going to be many mechanisms that need to guarantee that peace treaty. Maybe the United Nations Command could be something that would still be required even if we do have a peace treaty, just to make sure that both sides on the North and as well as on the South adhere to that peace treaty.
I see, and of course there are multiple stakeholders when it comes to building peace on the Korean Peninsula. How should South Korea then work with the United States as well as the United Nations Command?
Well, we've always benefited by our relationship with the United States as well as the United Nations Command. Now, sometimes, because we work with each other, we have some contentious moments and we disagree. But overall, it has benefited both the United States and the Republic of Korea. So the number one thing that I think we should do is continue with the kind of trust and amicable relationship that we've had so far with the United States as well as the United Nations Command. Now, there are many changes that are occurring on the Korean Peninsula. For one thing, the operational control of Korean forces are going to be retained by the Koreans pretty soon. And because of this, and another thing is that the Combined Forces Command, which is now led by a US 4-star, will be led by a Korean 4-star, and so forth. So all of these changes will require a more defined look at our relationship with the United States and our relationship with the United Nations Command, but it must be a basis of trust and amicable relations that we have right now.
I see. And you stressed the importance of diplomacy before in any case. And of course, you've basically grown up with diplomacy, with your mother having been Korea's first female diplomat who was dispatched to New York as well. So looking back on the recent attempts to restart the talks between North Korea and the US over the weekend, which collapsed, of course, do you think there needs to be a change of tactic when it comes to diplomacy between the two sides?
I think there needs to be a change in tactics by the North Koreans. First and foremost, we need to hear from the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, that he is willing to denuclearize. Now, how long it's going to take, where we're going to start, we can work those things out. But we really need to know whether he intends to denuclearize. And then we can start with what we can compensate to make him feel more safe. Others believe that the United States or South Korea or other countries should be the first to offer the first step. And I believe that we already did offer a lot of things. For one thing, the President of the United States met with Kim Jong-un 3 times. It has never happened in the relationship between these two countries. We've concluded major military exercises that's been going on for 60 years. And still, North Korea is not willing to accept these things as concrete steps. We've been able to build a lot of things to lower tensions on the Korean Peninsula. So I think now it is time for North Korea, especially their leader, to come out and say that we're going to denuclearize. I want to hear him say that in clear words. And then from there, we can start with other aspects of these negotiations.
I see. And until we reach that point, in the meantime, what do you think South Korea should do to safeguard the security of its people against the North nuclear threat and various other threats that you mentioned?
Right now, Korea has the best Air Force and a pretty good Navy. And compared to the North Koreans, especially our Navy and Air Force is pretty good. Unfortunately, from where I'm coming from, which is on the Army side, I see that fundamental equipment for the Army is wanting. And that's where I've been trying to focus on for the past couple of years. And that is the area that I wish to focus on as a retired military person, to improve the individual weapons of the soldier. I wish to take this opportunity to warn the North Koreans of one thing. Now, to the North Koreans, we South Korean soldiers, they look sloppy and ill-disciplined. But South Korean young men are not ill-disciplined. I have soldiered with 30 nations, and our soldiers are smart, they're loyal, they are disciplined, and it would be foolhardy for the North Koreans to think that just because our soldiers smile a lot and are sloppy and do not march as well as North Koreans, that they would be incapable of fighting off North Korea. So, although we South Korean military have issues, we are a democratic country that can overcome these things. But especially our younger generation of soldiers are very capable and very disciplined. So North Korea should not misjudge.
Well, finally, how close or how far do you think we are to actually turning the DMZ into a landmark of peace? And what do you think are the next steps that we should take towards that goal?
Well, we've done a great deal to turn the DMZ into a more safe place and a symbol of peace. Already on the east and western corridor, there are areas where trade between North and South Korea is possible, and we have had such experiences before the whole nuclear issue came up. Right now in the central area, we have remains being recovered by a recovery team, and overall tensions have been lowered. So all of these things tell me that there is hope and there is possibility. But again, these could be misleading, and these require continued effort from North and South Korea. And I would just ask the North Koreans to be a little bit more forthcoming in their intent to really build peace on the Korean Peninsula.
I see. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. And thank you so much for making time for us today, General.
Thank you again for inviting me.